Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. I am Jesse Jackson. Joining me today is Lou.
Good morning, everyone, or whatever time of day it is for you.
Yes. And the podcast mom, Karen.
Hello.
And we are talking season 1, episode 10, Believers on Babylon 5. So this was an interesting one. And before I get you guys' thoughts, I was going to share, this was the episode, I won't say it sold me on the show, but it told me that this was going to be a different kind of TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts. And we'll start with you, Karen.
Overall, I thought the episode was good. And as you told us we should do as we're watching, I went to the Lurker's Guide and read through some of that. And I think it's interesting how people were so angry about this episode because it wasn't sci-fi enough for them. And I think of sci-fi as anything that maybe challenges our beliefs and makes us think about things and makes us think about what the future might be like. That's science fiction to me. And fantasy, and this is kind of a mix of the two. I think it's solidly science fiction. It's about what religions might look like in the future and if we were to meet with other aliens and things like that. I mean, I don't understand where people would say it's not sci-fi, just personally.
One of the things I thought, and our mutual podcast friend, Brent, from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, always talks a lot about that this is quote unquote, not necessarily sci-fi. It's a drama with a set in space, but there's really nothing science fiction about it. Or it's a police procedural, and it just so happens one of the partners is alien. So is that really science fiction? And I think that's just tomato, right? Like
right.
It's whatever you thought.
Yep.
If it's a alien race set in a space station,
it's science fiction.
Yeah. How do you science
right.
fiction?
And actually, I like to put it more in this genre heading.
Yeah.
Speculative, it's futuristic, it's utopian. So all of that can kind of go, all those subgenres can go under this main heading. But anyway, I did appreciate this episode for the themes that were in it. I thought the makeup wasn't as good.
Okay.
Which bothered me a little bit.
With the parents and the child. Yeah.
Right. It takes you out of the scene a little bit. I mean, our main characters were all on point with their makeup and everything, the prosthetics, but the new family was, I don't know, it was lackluster to me, but the character work done by them kind of made up for it, in my opinion. So yeah, I thought it was a really solid outing.
All right. And Lou?
My first initial reaction when I saw the title was I thought of the Monkey song. Now I'm a believer.
Yes. Oh, very nice.
But I'm surprised that because I don't look at anything else when I'm looking at the episode. So I'm really surprised, Karen, that you said that people didn't think this was science fiction enough, because to me, this is science fiction at its best, making social comments through story devices or story ideas. And this whole episode was pure science fiction. I mean, I don't think you can get much more than that. And I really enjoyed the A storyline, the B storyline with Ivanova. I'm never going to say her name right.
Ivanova.
Yeah. I didn't really like that storyline at all. I thought it was just filler in this episode. Maybe there's something about these raiders that will pay off further down in the series. I don't know.
He says no.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I liked her reaction not being assigned to that duty initially was fun, but overall, I thought it was just a waste of time. So the main storyline, however, it's a very interesting dynamic about belief systems. Yeah. And I don't want to give away the whole thing right off the top, but I really enjoyed the A storyline. And I do agree with Karen. The makeup, the only thing that really threw me off is when they did close-ups on the mother. You could see the join line along her cheekbones and whatnot.
And up here by her eye,
yeah. But other than that, I was fine with most everything else. And yeah, it's good to see the dynamics between the characters not always being smooth. So that from that aspect, it felt quite real.
Funny you bring up that B story, because I had totally forgotten about it, like literally forgotten about it. It doesn't mirror the main story at all. It feels discordant within this episode.
And it doesn't end very well
No.
either.
It
No,
doesn't.
and in fact, yeah, I had forgotten it too. In fact, I was thinking, oh, we only had an A storyline this time.
We did.
Yeah, and
We
then
did.
yeah,
Ultimately.
and so I guess if you, and once again, this is, you don't need to know this to enjoy the episode, but JMS did talk about that the show was a little light, so they threw that in there just to pad the episode for time, right? And so,
you can tell.
yeah, so I agree. I mean, that could have been in any episode, you know, and it was nice that Susan got out of the ship, and I agree with you that her discussion with you know, Jeffrey Sinclair, right? Oh no, I'll just sit here. Maybe I'll knit.
Oh wow. Yeah, that was
and him going, hey, I have an idea, you know, and just kind of having fun with her. I thought it was a really nice moment.
that was passive aggressiveness at its finest.
It was awesome.
I thought.
I love
She was
that.
great. That's the only part of that storyline that was good.
Yeah, and the rest of it, it's her. I thought of Claudia Christian, right? Like, okay, I'm just gonna sit in this set with my helmet on, and I have to act on green screen like, oh, I just shot something. Oh, look, there's a lot of raiders. Yeah, not very much at all.
And I thought for sure it was going to come back and something was going to happen, and it was like, and she escapes.
Yes.
I mean, it was just
yeah, and I don't know. Once again, a lot of people talked about that in this. You know, just to give you for you new listeners, when Karen and I talk about the Lurker's Guide, what this is when Babylon 5 came out, J. Michael Straczynski was one of the first creative people to embrace online forums. So he would go to these forums and would respond to people's questions.
Brave guy.
His only rule was no new story ideas. And he remains diligent about that. If you follow him on Twitter and if you tweet, you know what would be a cool story, you will get blocked, because he is paranoid is the wrong word, but that's what I'm going to use. He is incredibly diligent about someone casually saying, oh, this would be a good story. And now that he says he can never use that.
Yeah.
right.
Because then someone could sue him saying he stole the story idea from him.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah. So so people bring up these questions, and then the Lurker's Guide takes his answers and posts them. And he had said that, yeah, she had enough of a leeway, she had enough of a head start that she was able to get to the jump gate before they did anything.
Just dumb.
And he says it just would have, there's nothing to see there. There would have been nothing
Right.
dramatic. But like, well, yeah, you could have just cut her going into the jump gate. But anyway.
Right. Or, dovetailing back with the original ship and going through I made it, he won't
exactly.
bother us again. And it wouldn't have been
Yeah.
a big deal, but whatever.
We do have a Star Trek connection.
Yes.
David Gerard is the writer of this.
Yep.
Truly one of my favorite writers.
Yeah.
He wrote Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah.
He wrote the quasi sequel for Deep Space Nine
Mhm.
with, for the anniversary. He's also written a lot of great novels.
Yeah. When Harley was one.
And yes.
The Chor War series.
Yeah.
Which he's never finished.
Yeah.
I actually met him once at a science fiction convention, so it was pretty cool.
I did too.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
and in fact, it was at Dragon Con.
Mhm.
Stood in line to get to him. I'm just such a geek, right? It's such a
Nerd.
yeah, and also I am so like the Saturday Night Live character. Remember when you did this?
Oh, yeah.
And played
Yeah.
Hey Jude? Wasn't that great?
Yeah.
So I told him, I said I had to think long and hard because I flew from Dallas
Mhm.
and I wanted to bring every book of yours I own to get signed, but just for space. And so I brought The Martian Child, and which is his novel based on
Movie.
him adopting a child.
Yeah.
And he smiled at me, says, well, you got the right one,
Mm.
which made me very happy.
Cool.
And so
Yeah, and apparently that's why he was fingered by JMS for writing this episode,
Mm.
because of the child
Oh.
component.
Yeah.
Just my small little moment of fame with him is that we sat on a panel together to talk about the works of Harlan Ellison. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you have that recorded anywhere?
No, this is like 10 years ago or something.
Oh, I would have loved to seen that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I would have loved to hear that. Yeah. I really recommend. He has a Jumpgate trilogy, which is really an interesting. And then I do. If you have never read The Martian Child, the movie was really good. I mean, they did a good version of filming it, but I really recommend the book. And the whole idea is he's adopting, as a gay man, he's adopting a fairly, not a teenager, but like an 8 or 9-year-old that had been through a lot of really, really difficult situations. And so the idea of how do you raise a child with that set of
baggage.
Problems. That baggage. Yes, well said. Yeah. So truly, I think a wonderful writer, and I thought this was good. So, okay.
We have a second Star Trek connection, by the way. The mother, played by Trisha O'Neill, played Captain Rachel Garrett in yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, nice.
Was that her?
That was her. It was.
Okay.
I just looked it up.
Okay.
But
wow.
One of the things about Captain Garrett is, and this is dumb, but my husband and I, when we first started, I don't know, being friends, I guess it was long before we had a relationship. We were playing Magic the Gathering, and another card game that came out was the Star Trek The Next Generation card game. And her card was like the dumbest card that was useful.
Okay.
So everyone was trying to trade for her card, and I had one, and my husband was mad at me because I would never trade him for it. So Rachel Garrett, she played also a couple other races, a Klingon and some other stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, and she comes back as a different character in Babylon 5 in the future.
Oh, okay.
So a long history, and I think it showed. I think she played the role really, really well. The guy who played the dad, he looked familiar, but even through the makeup, but I don't know what from. I mean,
he was on Seinfeld.
Oh, okay.
He was the carpenter on Seinfeld.
Oh, okay. So just because he's had just this long...
Done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, different stuff. Yeah. All right. So the premise is this young kid is dying, and there is a very simple surgery that will save his life. However, the children of the egg, I can't remember what race they're called, but anyway, their beliefs are that if you have an incision, not like a small nick or something, but if you are cut the way that, as they talked about, an animal would be for slaughter, your soul leaves your body, and therefore the only thing left is a shell, and you will die. So they come looking for a miracle. And let's say right away, I agree with, I kept thinking, isn't there some way you could do a sonic to break up this? Like they do with gallstones now, you don't have to cut, you can just
kidney stones.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the premise is that the only way to save the child is to have surgery. And they believe that will kill the child anyway, his soul. So we get into a battle back and forth. So I don't really know how we want to break this apart, because not only do we have the debate of the medical, but they go to every main cast member, every ambassador, asking for them to intercede for them because they don't have an ambassador on Babylon 5. And all of them, for different reasons, say, sorry, you're out of luck. So Lou, pick where you want to start and we'll have a discussion.
The crux of the episode is about belief systems, and that is an area which is so difficult to objectively parse out what is right and what is wrong, because as Delyn said, who knows which God is right? And I think that's the crux of the issue here. I mean, we have these parents with this belief system, which is pretty interesting. And I was kept on thinking to myself, well, what if you lost a limb, or if you got cut? Like, how strict is their belief system? Would they? It's
the torso, like this part that your soul is in. Apparently, that's what it says on the Lurker.
So that's That's even more interesting. But I did like the structuring of the episode in terms of that. Like, I know you were talking about this. Couldn't they treat this Jesse through a sonic waves or something like this? But I like the fact that it was an ailment that was easily fixed, because that really highlights that it's just this belief that it's not like the operation itself is really that dangerous. I mean, all operations are dangerous to a certain degree, but this one seemed relatively straightforward, kind of like taking out an appendix or something like that. So
yes,
that's not the issue here. It's totally down to the belief systems. So you have these parents with their belief system, and then of course you have the doctor with his Hippocratic oath, which is really more a set of moral principles as opposed to a belief system. I guess you could say it as a belief system, but it's not a religious belief system. It's more of a moral belief system. So, and when I'm watching the episode, I said, well, who's right here? Like, because your initial instinct is you got to save the kid. Like, I mean, seriously, but
yeah,
because I have a certain set of values, much like the doctor. Like, it's easy to be on the doctor side, but we've seen this thing in real world situations where parents won't let their kids get blood transfusions or whatever because of similar belief systems. So it's an episode that I don't think that you really are going to get you're not going to get an answer for it. I don't think it's going to it doesn't provide you with one, but I think it's just important for you to be aware of these types of dilemmas and just try to put yourself in the other person's shoes is really what it's all about.
Well, and we can go just to modern day with the amount of people that there were a group of people that refused to be vaccinated with COVID for either religious reasons or medical reasons or
belief system.
Honestly, belief seasons, politically. There's
also the whole situation of the racial bias.
Yeah.
Because a lot of Black people were experimented on
in the past. Yes.
Right. And so they're wary of getting any vaccination from the government.
Yeah. And so I think that was very, very, and I do think, well, Karen, your thoughts before I say anything.
I think everybody was right.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. But I think looking at the episode, and if you think about everybody in the episode, it's easy to vilify the parents. It is very easy when you're an earthling like us.
Yeah.
But I have to say, if I had that kind of conviction and I had that belief that I was so attuned to, I think I would be in the same boat. Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't let someone do that to my child if I didn't believe it was the right thing to do. That's your child, So I get all the different sides. I even get Sinclair's side on this, that he just, I can't step in and make this call on behalf of the parents. I can't do it. I did like that we saw a big part of each race just from the interaction they had with the parents.
Yeah.
Jakar is about, what can you do for me? Right. And if they can't do anything for you, he's not going to step in. Yeah. Londo is about money. So if you don't have the money to pay all my fees, then no. Hello, medical system in the United States.
Yeah.
Delenn she had her own religious convictions. And I think it was upsetting to see them try and get her to change her belief system to fit with theirs. And then, of course, we have Kosh, who is always so almost encrypted in his response, saying that, it's already been, the pebble has already been thrown. Is that what the deal is? And the earthquake is whatever. He had something to say about it, though. And they even point out, and they're bringing this up again, that Kosh was operated on against his will. So why wouldn't you step in for us? And he says that things have already been set in motion. I couldn't change any of that. And yes, I think he could, but whatever.
The line is, the avalanche has already started. It is too late for the pebbles to vote.
Right.
So which is a great line.
It's great. It's just, what do you take from that? If I was the parents, I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
What is he talking about? They're much simpler than that sort of philosophy.
Yeah.
So essentially all they see is we've been turned down. We are not represented on this. Why didn't they go to the non-aligned worlds?
Yeah.
For one thing.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, who would you go to there? They don't have one representative for them. So I can see that as well. But not that I can see what they did is right, but I can see why they did it.
Yeah. So a couple questions. One, I'd like your thoughts on, I am absolutely believe that Dr. Franklin was convinced that I'm going to give them a well child, and they are going to go, well, we didn't want you to do this, but now that you did. And I'll put this something very simple. I know when Chris was a teenager, he's come back to us now as an adult and said, there were times when you forced me to do something that now that I'm an adult, I look and go, I'm glad you took the choice out of my hands. You put me on a better path. You protected me when I wasn't smart enough to protect myself. So I think he was very much convinced that they see their child healthy. They are going to forget, like, okay, we held to our beliefs, but now then we have a child and that's okay. We're going to move on. But
right. Ask forgiveness, not permission.
Exactly.
Is essentially what he was working on there.
Now, it's easy for me to say, and I think you were exactly right, Karen, everyone's right and everyone's wrong. So it's easy for me to say he shouldn't have done that. He should not have gone against the parents' wishes, especially when we see how it ends. But what are y'all's thoughts? Did he overstep, or is he had to follow his own conscience? And Lou, I'll start with you.
That's the aspect of the episode that I struggled the most with. I understood his actions, but at the same time, he's going against somebody else's belief system. And that's the crux of the episode, really. I mean, the most heartbreaking moment is the scene after the boys had the operations and the parents come to see him, and the boy's happy and healthy, but his parents...
I feel the same. Mom, Dad.
My spirit is still with me, but they're like, his parents are totally gassed. I had to say in the back of my mind, how could the parents see any difference? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
That wasn't really, I guess it's just such an ingrained belief that they just automatically believe that. But because how could you just tell by looking at the boy that he was any different? I don't know.
I don't think you could, unless there is something they don't explain, like they have a different vision where they can see someone's soul or not.
An aura or whatever.
An aura, yeah. But I think it's just because they knew, right?
So where I've rested on that point of the episode is ultimately understand why the doctor did what he did. I don't think it was right. And I think that Sinclair should have punished him. I think he should have been dismissed or removed from duty or something. But that's what I think. Like, I don't like that the doctor got off scot-free. That's basically where it came down to. Axes should have consequences.
I think that's the only, when I said at the very beginning, this was not a typical show. In other words, I was shocked the first time I saw this that they killed their child.
Yeah.
And that great scene where they're in that traveling robe and they lie what it's about. But yes, it is. They don't lie. It's a traveling to the next life. And they're like, no. He's at peace now. Thank you, doctor. This is a good thing. His body has gone to meet his soul, and Franklin is just shocked. And I was shocked as a viewer. Oh my God, I can't believe they went there. So, and I agree. Dr. Franklin not only went against the parents' wishes, but he disobeyed a direct order.
Yeah.
Right. And so 2 strikes of why he shouldn't have done that. Karen?
Well, technically it was 3 because he violated the Hippocratic Oath as well. We talked about that. It's not, you should save everyone. That's not what the Hippocratic, it says do no harm.
Right.
So doing no harm would have been leaving the situation.
Yeah.
Saying, I bow to your wishes. That would have been doing no harm. He's not making the child any worse.
Right.
And he is doing what not only his captain ordered, but what these parents wanted. And he literally did harm because of how things ended up. And if he couldn't understand that them coming in all somber and sad with the robe was going to turn into something bad, then he had a God complex, I think, which a lot of doctors have, by the way.
Yes, absolutely.
I just, that was coming down Main Street right there when they were in, well, we're bringing the robe to the child. They were very somber and he was very smug.
Yes. Yep.
Very smug. That is the perfect word, Karen. And I think in another series, right, perhaps the ending would have been the parents abandoned the child, and then they would have had to find a foster home for the child.
Right.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Me
Like, why
too.
doesn't he just say, why don't we'll look after him then? If you don't want to operate on him, then just consider him gone, and we'll take it from there. But I guess they're worried about his eternal soul and so forth. So.
And they called him a demon as well. So maybe that's their rationalization, that they don't want to unleash this demon onto anyone too.
And I do agree that Commander Sinclair, and I now then can never think he isn't wooden after watching this with you two. But I thought he did the right thing. And I thought him sitting, that was a great scene when he was talking to the young child.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very sweet and very loving.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't wooden in this one. I didn't think.
And the child himself said, yes, I want to live, but I don't want to live this way. I mean, so you think about it, the parents, the patient, your commanding officer, and your Hippocratic oath, right?
Mm-hmm.
All say you shouldn't do this, but because you think, and there's that great Aaron Sorkin line about I am God, there was, where with a surgeon, he knew better. He was convinced.
Is that Alec Baldwin?
Yes, Alec Baldwin has that line. Yeah, I can't remember the movie, but
I can't either.
Yeah, but Aaron Sorkin helped write it. I love that scene with the commander and him, and the whole idea. It's just a piece of goo, but don't tell the doctor he thinks it's an egg.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm not sure if I'm always unclear. Is that a nurse or another doctor? I assume that a station that big, Franklin is not the only doctor. He is just the head doctor. So it felt like she was another doctor.
She was.
And she
according
was
to
like,
the episode summary.
Yeah. She's like, hey, I'm right here with you. I'm going to break it too. I love the idea that they went to each ambassador, and Londo, you're right. Hey, if you can pay me enough money, I'll intervene.
Mm-hmm.
Just all about, he's just trying to get money to gamble.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with all the costs that he was spouting. He just wanted the money.
Jakar is definitely you have no value to me. Your planet has no value. You have no value. So therefore, why would I waste a favor on someone who gets me nothing? Delenn, I think honestly was the most honest of, because of our religious belief, I can't interfere. And then Kosh is Kosh. He makes no sense whatsoever.
I am anxiously awaiting the payoff, or at least part of the payoff, when it comes to Kosh. Yeah. Just so you know, I'm putting that out there right now. I want to know what he's about.
I think that is a very excellent thought. I think you are betting your future well.
Yeah. Okay, after the last episode, the Death Walker, I'm wondering if the Vorlons are somehow responsible for the disappearance of the other 4 Babylon stations. But
interesting. Ooh, I like that. I like that theory.
And I'm like Karen, I'm waiting for the payoff with him as well, because right now he just seems to be like a fan of kung fu, Zenism or something.
Take the pebble from my palm.
Yeah.
What is the sound of one hand clapping? Or that kind of thing.
Exactly. I wanted to touch on you made an interesting observation there, Jesse, about the other doctor. To me, that was the one spot where the episode could have used a regular cast member instead of that doctor, to have like either Garibaldi or maybe Ivanova, for whatever reason, somehow got involved in this situation, and maybe they had backstory where one of their a nephew, or who knows, even maybe their own son or daughter, I don't know if they had kids, but where they would be very vehemently pushing him to do the same thing this doctor, Maya Henderson or Hernandez, I think was her name. Boy, she was short. But I just think that would have been an easy win to flesh out one of the other supporting cast members, as opposed to giving it to a walk-on character, basically, who was just a sounding board for the real main doctor. I cannot remember his name either.
Franklin.
Franklin.
Franklin. So that's one aspect I thought they could have done something different there, and that would have strengthened the dramatic tension.
Like he goes to get advice or counseling from a friend on the station.
That could have been interesting.
Yeah.
We all agree that Sinclair did the right thing, right? I mean, he made the right choice.
In our opinion,
I realize. I think, And I love the fact that he's really angry. And then I love Franklin's arrogance of, I'm waiting for your apology because I did this, and look, the kid lives, and like, you know, check the temperature in hell. He's furious with him.
Smuggety Smuggerson.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes back, I wonder, and I truly can't remember because it's been a while since I've watched every episode, but I wonder if you're Dr. Franklin, how much does this haunt you in your decisions going forward? Is this something that you have, to use your words, Karen, baggage? Do we have this baggage now that because of arrogance, I specifically do no harm, I did tons of harm. I hastened this child's death. I now had to make the parents, they had to kill their own child, the child's
And he has to live with the fact that they now have baggage.
Yes.
They had to take their child's life. That can't be easy. It has to have repercussions in their souls, you know, in their hearts and souls. So he's responsible for that as well. And I wouldn't say ruining their lives, but causing a huge impact on their lives, you know.
Yeah.
That it can't be easy to deal with.
And they were very forgiving of Dr. Franklin at the end, right?
Yes. They could have pressed charges.
Much kinder than I would have thought. Yeah. And I do think the scene of all the candles and that them sitting there and was really beautiful done and shocking.
Yep.
Now I maybe a little over dramatic that Franklin, the close up of Franklin's
he runs,
face, where he did that. You know, and he's running through everything. But I overall just a really nice thought. And I guess they needed the Susan to fill out. I mean, I was glad she got out of the CNC, but I agree with you guys. It wasn't a very strong piece. And I would have put more, I don't know, like, and maybe you didn't, maybe because of budget reasons. I know certain cast members, you have contracts that you're only in so many episodes. So this is why you didn't see Lynn talking to Lanier about it, or the having Stephen First blubber, you know, talking to Londo Veer. So any final thoughts before we go to ratings and we have some feedback?
Well, I forgot about this, but I actually changed my opinion while I was watching this. At first I think, the parents don't want their kid to get well. And I thought worse of them, how could they do this to their child? But as I was watching it, I feel like they struggled with that, but they were resolute in their beliefs.
Yes.
And that there's nothing to blame about that. And I think there's a huge difference between people that don't want to get vaccinated today and that sort of belief system, that the people that don't want to get vaccinated are hurting other people.
Yes, exactly.
And these people weren't hurting anyone but their own people, their own family. So I think that's where the defining line is for me. If you're just hurting yourself, big whoop. Believe in whatever you want. But if you're hurting or impacting someone else in a negative way because of that, then you need to think about what you're doing. But, as I'm watching it, I thought, I get it. I would never do anything like that, but they had a belief system in place.
Yeah.
So, I just thought it was weird that I'm sitting there and I realized at the end of the episode that I changed my mind completely. And I just thought everyone was right in their own way.
Yeah, I think so too. I really, really just, I like that this episode tried to do something different, and I think they succeeded. Sometimes an episode you go, I see what you're trying to do there, but I don't know if it really clicked. And this, I do think they gave you something to think about and left you feeling a little, it was just sad. It was sad all the way around for everyone.
Yeah.
Lou, thoughts?
I really like how this episode built and referenced the fact that Sinclair basically did what the doctor did when he ordered the previous doctor to operate on Kosh, because that was going against the Vorlon Empire's orders. So it shows you that what Sinclair says to the doctor at one point is that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't change anything. So that's really, I think, the outside of the belief issues of the episode, I think that's the moral of this episode is you can always, you can do everything possibly right, but what do you ever want to call it? Fate, destiny, or just whatever. It's not going to turn out the way that you thought it would.
Yeah.
But we have to try, which is what makes us human. So I really like that. I also like the fact that they referenced this ship in, that in the B storyline was called the Asimov. So that was cool.
Yes, I thought that was really, really nicely done. That made me smile. I'm glad you remembered that, because Isaac Asimov's one of my favorite writers and truly one of the giants in science fiction writing. And so, yeah, that was a really nice, very, very cool.
He's second only to Bradbury for me.
Yeah, I think you could make that when you're putting him up there. I mean, the ABCs, Asimov, Bradbury, Clark.
Yep.
And so, yeah, really, really well done.
I got to meet
Wow.
Bradbury.
Oh, nice.
When I was in junior high, he came to our mentally gifted minors class and talked to us. He was the nicest guy ever.
I did not meet any of them, but I did. Isaac Asimov was on a talk show, the local Kevin McCartney's show, and I got to call in and talk to him for a minute, which was fun. Yeah,
cool.
That's meeting.
Yeah, it was. That was fun.
Cool.
All right. So, no other final thoughts. Let's do our ratings. Karen,
I give it 8.5. Hold on. How do you say it? Fingal eggs. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. And the only reason it's not a 9, because I do think this is impactful, is because of the B storyline overall. I mean, I did like parts of it where she has the discussion with Sinclair and the Asimov name, but I think that took it down for me.
Yeah, Lou.
Yeah, I'm right there with Karen on this one. I'll also give it 8.5 eggs, and I'll give it the Galopit egg.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna go 8 as well. 8 out of 10 pebbles in an avalanche. Yeah, I think if I would give the A line like a 9, 9.5, and the B line was just a 7, 7.5. So I'm gonna split the difference.
5.
Yeah. Just because I really loved Ivanova's, the way she interacted with.
I'll just sit here and make a sandwich.
Yeah. I mean, very passive aggressive. Just a lot of fun, and I also love how he was amused by her, right? Like he was so like, okay, yes,
He did that thing where he's like, oh, I guess maybe you should go out. And, he's
I've
like saying
idea.
that I didn't say all that. Yeah. And it reminded me of Shirley from Community. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Community, but she's a very passive aggressive kind of person. And that was definitely a Shirley.
So Karen, I think we've got some feedback.
We do. 2 pieces of feedback from Alexander, and then one from Holly from Wisconsin. Let me do Holly's first. She says, she's commenting on this episode that we're talking about. Hey, all, a very interesting episode dealing with belief and where to draw the line with getting medical treatment. Love Dr. Franklin's interactions with Sean. Franklin deciding to go ahead and do the surgery anyway against the commander's wishes didn't surprise me all that much, but still emotional to say the least, with the consequences and how Sean's parents reacted after finding out the surgery was performed. Had the feeling the Lamuda and the traveling robe was what it turned out to be. A great episode that brings up a lot of good questions and talking points that are still just as important today as it was then. I'll wrap it up here, Holly from Wisconsin. So good comments. I agree. I thought the traveling road was, if Franklin hadn't been so smug, I think he would have caught that. The traveling road. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to read the Deathwalker feedback from Alexander first. And I apologize, Alexander. We did have to kind of trim down your comments. We read them in entirety. And I clicked on the link that you sent us about the trial that's happening in Germany right now. So maybe we can tweet that out for people.
Very interesting.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. For context, Alexander is from Germany. So the Deathwalker episode, as he talked about, was very prevalent to the way his society is currently dealing with things. So go ahead, Karen.
Exactly. And it was very insightful, a lot of that stuff. But anyway, I had to take part of that out. So here's what he says about Deathwalkers. Even though I'm all caught up on the episodes, I'm still getting used to writing in advance. So here's another mail for an episode after the fact. Deathwalker, which was a great discussion to close off the week. As you mentioned in your podcast, this is an episode that is still relevant now as it was when the show first aired, despite some decades passing in between. I find the resolution of this episode super interesting. The actions of the Vorlons in the end struck me first as questionable, and then increasingly sinister the longer I think about them. That is because, in a roundabout way, their statement, "You are not ready for immortality," seems to side with the Deathwalker's worldview. Their entire plan rests on the idea that her immortality serum would throw the galaxy into chaos and war. She is convinced that everyone would start fighting like wild animals over it, and as soon as the cost is revealed, she thinks people would inevitably kill each other for their own good. And aside from me, I think that's a great take on it, that she is sowing chaos.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
By coming back for this. Having the Vorlon, who seem to have something of a parental role in this galactic community, assume a similar argument to a war criminal is already a bit uncomfortable. But then there's also the way they go about it. The Vorlon could have assumed the role of a supportive parent and said, "Hey, you guys go ahead and let her research, but we're going to send observers to make sure there are no more atrocities and you keep to your agreement." Or if they wanted to be really sure, they could have abducted her transport ship and brought it into their own territory so they would be in control of her work. I'm sure they could have done all these things, but instead they chose to send a new ship, a bigger ship, to blow up the Deathwalker publicly for all to see. To me, this feels like a demonstration of power, almost like a warning. The younger races now know it is possible to create an immortality serum. And to me, it almost seems like the Vorlons are saying, "Don't try again. We're not going to let you." So that's the crux of what he said in that email. And I think it made me think more about the episode as well, which again is the sign of a good discussion.
Absolutely.
It brings up more things for you. And then his discussion about the believers, he says, applying this typical Trek structure to believers, I think the setup is quite different. Franklin, as our main character, isn't the moral center. From the beginning, his judgment feels far more uncertain, and the moral dilemma of these episodes seems much less external, but rather coming from him. The spiritual family, the regulations, his colleagues, everyone around him points him to a solution to the situation, which arguably by the end of the episode could be seen as the quote unquote right one. The solution is there from the very beginning and it doesn't change. We aren't introduced to a real new technology option, and I think that's important. If Franklin was the moral center, it would feel unfair for the story to force him into the dilemma with no way out. But because his judgment is flawed, giving him an easy out would have been much worse. Looking forward, I think this episode establishes something very important for us. The characters and their morals in this show are flawed, and they will make mistakes. That doesn't mean they become villains or even unsympathetic, though. For a while, the past couple of years, there was a huge surge in quote unquote anti-hero stories, but I do not think Babylon 5 quite falls into that category. As I see it, the show is less cynical than that. They are all fundamentally good people, and I gladly root for them, but at least some of the dilemmas they face won't be just imposed by the world. They might also come from them. And then he talks about just a little bit about how do we deal with that species moving forward, and that's not an easy question at all. And he says a bunch of thoughts on an episode that rarely fails to inspire lots of discussion. I'm really looking forward to yours. Best, Alexander. Such great feedback from him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, really well done.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I know it is not fair to compare Babylon 5 to Star Trek, that I tend to do a lot, but because the original Star Trek and Next Generation and others, Deep Space Nine, all of them were so ingrained into my TV fiction fandom, right? Like it is.
Yep.
So I am holding it against a ruler of something that I love. And I know that JMS has said that the Twilight Zone, the original Star Trek, were two of his guiding philosophies. And this would have been a great episode of the Twilight Zone. It definitely would have been a great episode of Star Trek, but Star Trek to me would never have had the courage to go this kind of ending.
Agreed.
And that's I think one of the reasons why I'm excited that we're doing this Babylon 5 watch, because I love the series so much, and I love seeing you guys as newbies getting to see where this show is going. So
I also, one of the things that's mentioned in the Lurker guide is a book called The Canticle of Leibowitz.
Yes.
Which I read growing up as well. And that's from the 50s. I mean, these things have been, as long as we've been talking about science fiction and the future and that sort of thing. And I'm talking about like going all the way back to like steampunk from the 20s and 30s. The themes repeat. So you're going to get some similarities between them, but that's the nature of genre fiction. Is there's similar themes, but we think about them in different ways for each story.
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to people who are commenting on the YouTube channel where I'm posting these episodes, along with Jesse, who posts them on an audio only podcast stream. So I just want to shout out to a couple of guys, Mike Finney, and I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your name, Marchechi Bohm. They've been pretty constant commenters, and it's Marchechi notes that it's funny when you guys talk about current events that one of the first rule of a lot of Babylon 5 online fandoms is no politics. And he says he understands from a moderation point of view that you don't want to get into that, but he says really given the DNA of the show, how can you not talk about it, because it's so ingrained. And we totally agree. And we're finding that very same conundrum, but hopefully we're doing it in a way that's not going to turn people off. And Mike Finney says that JMS purposely included a lot of politics because he knew that the more things change, the more they stay the same. And he also said, like an interesting comment, that the craziest thing about today is how people are already complaining about the Babylon 5 remake being woke before anything's been done. So this is the environment that we're living in. So it's great that you guys are doing the feedback. I will do my best to respond to them as each episode comes out. And one of the comments mentioned that it's cool that he listened to us and we brought up points that he had never thought about before. And that's the kind of stuff that we live for. And so that was very gratifying to read as well. So thank you to those guys and everybody else who's commenting on the YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the feedback. And we try to, at least I know Lou and Karen, and we are trying we don't want to insult anyone, but I think that once again, talking about a show of beliefs, right? We have our beliefs. We try to be respectful of others, but I don't know how you can't talk politics with like this kind of episode or the previous ones we've seen, right? And so we try to be respectful. We try to show grace, but I thank you for us. At least so far, the feedback is we're navigating that minefield correctly. So thank you for that.
I feel like we're walking a tightrope some days on what to say and what not to say. So hopefully if we step off, you'll forgive us.
And I think it's important to be always able to laugh at yourself when you're doing these kind of discussions, because otherwise that's a sign that you're taking yourself too seriously and you're not entertaining other viewpoints. So that's what we surely try to do here. And we have a lot of fun with it. And underneath it all, we know that we're right, and you guys are all wrong.
Of course. 100%.
All right. So if someone wants to reach you, Lou, or if they want to find the show on YouTube, how can they?
Sure. Look for it at Lou's Reviews on YouTube. It's under the Babylon 5 playlist. And you'll also find all my curated Stephen King episodes. And once we do a final episode, I'm going to do a Netflix style dump of all our discussions of the Midnight Mass series that we're doing. So look forward to that. And you can also find me on Twitter at Lou W. Sitzma or at Stephen King Podcast.
Karen?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm at Aleveria, Aleveria, on the Twitter machine. And there's a link in my bio to all those other places. And by the way, I just went through your YouTube page, by the way, and I hadn't looked at it in depth. I mean, I saw that you had all the Stephen King, but I looked at all the authors. They're very interesting authors you have up there. So,
oh yes, I forgot about them. Sorry, no, I do also do writer interviews about less well-known writers, but
some of them I have heard of. So that's a good thing.
Cool.
So I'm going to go through and watch some of those, and I just think they're interesting. So go to his channel if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in Stephen King, genre stuff. It's a good channel.
Thank you, Karen.
And so you can send email to the show at jklb5podcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can hear me talk about music on Set Listing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast, where I put out a couple episodes every week, interviewing musicians, fans of the boss. I had a pretty good day this last week where Sir Paul played in New Jersey and Bruce joined him on stage to do Glory Days and I Want to Be Your Man.
Nice.
So I'm sure there were many Beatles, Springsteen fans losing their blank when that happened. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Come back to us next week. We will have a new episode coming on. We are slowly getting through the first season. And thank you guys for being along the ride. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Karen. Listeners, go get vaccinated. Go get boosted. Be kind to each other because that's how we're going to get through this. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And scene.